I've been involved in FLL for around 16 years. And yes, that is longer than many people who compete in FLL today have been alive. And I've worked with a lot of teams and watched a lot of teams, and one of the most important things that I see a lot of teams get wrong is at the start of the season, choosing tasks. Now, if your team doesn't choose tasks correctly, they will have a really difficult time throughout the season and likely will have a not so great score in the robot performance portion of your competition. So in this video, I will show you how to correctly choose the tasks that your team will do at the competition. First, we need to accurately determine how good of a team we really are. And the best way to know that is how well has your team done in previous seasons. If they are, winning their regional championship frequently and they are getting very high in World Festival, then great, you're one of the best teams in the world and should try to score everything on the field. If your team is doing okay, or, has some experience, then we need to score some of the points on the field. And if your team is new and starting out, we need to very carefully choose which tasks we do in order to give ourselves the best chance at the competition. Once your team has figured out how good of a team they actually are, they next need to figure out the difficulty of every single way to score points on the field. Interestingly enough, to determine the difficulty of any task on the field, you do not need any Lego to figure this out. We're going to use our hands, and we're going to pretend to be the robot. Now, we can obviously score any task on the field using our hands, but what we are trying to do is figure out how difficult it is for the robot to replicate what our hands are doing. Does your hand need to do something that is very precise? Is it easy to mess up the motion doing it with your hands? Do you need to really, really slowly do something with your hands? And you should ask a lot of these questions, because if it is difficult for your hands to do the task, it is going to be way more difficult for your robot to do the task. Also, you should keep in mind that some of these tasks require you to do other things beforehand. For example, feeding the orca with the krill requires you to get the krill from around the field. And this may not be so easy to get the krill from around the field, so unless your team is willing to create a mechanism to pick up the krill off of the field, they should not consider trying to make a mechanism to feed the orca. And also, they should consider the fact that they need to make something to pick up the krill when considering the difficulty of scoring the orca. We should also consider the fact that not all tasks have to be done in full. For example, the trident. You don't have to pick up both pieces of the trident, and I know that the three-pronged pointy part of the trident is kind of hard to get, but obviously the long pole part of the trident is much easier to get, so your team should consider picking up just the long pole part of the trident. And there are other examples where your team can consider doing a suboptimal way to score points because it is much easier and is doable, where the optimal way to score points is much, much, much harder. Once we have accurately determined the difficulty of the tasks, we then need to determine what tasks we as a team can do. If your team is pretty competent and is pretty experienced with building robots, they can try to do a lot of the tasks. If your team is very new, maybe not a lot of the tasks, but what every team should do is start with the tasks that are easy. The tasks that are easy should be done first, because then your team knows that they are going to score points once they have done them. If your team decides to choose the most difficult task first, maybe your team will not actually finish anything that will do that most difficult task, and then your team will have nothing at the competition, or your team might score points on that really difficult task, and not score a lot of points anywhere else, and will still have a relatively poor robot score. So it's very important that your team tries to do all of the easy tasks first, before they attempt to do anything more difficult. Finally, the difficulties of the tasks are not set in stone. Your team can find out while trying to come up with a solution to a task that it's actually really hard, and your team is not easily able to come up with a solution, so this task that your team thought was relatively easy might actually be quite hard. But also, your team may find out that a task is actually a lot easier than they thought. It could be because your team found a better way to do it than they thought of originally, and so the task is not so bad, or they can find a video on YouTube that gives them an idea of a way to do a task that is really hard, or your team could just get lucky and suddenly try something that works and the task isn't so hard anymore. So, your team needs to be flexible and reassess the difficulties of the tasks as they actually try to do them, and throughout the season in general. Alright, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from this video. If this video helped you, please do be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to support me more, you can also check me out on Bricklink. Thank you for watching, and good luck in the FLL season.